Hi, how's it going? This is the Kwumsy K3. I don't know if I'm pronouncing Kwumsy correctly. It sounds like someone saying clumsy in a baby voice. When Kwumsy reached out and asked me to review their products, I was more interested than usual. I get requests to review a lot of products, and I generally don't accept. I did once a long time ago, and it just wasn't for me. There are a number of reasons why, and not the least of which is that it's just simpler to review what I want, when I want, how I want. But I was already looking at compact monitors, and my initial thought was that the K3 might be handy for video editing at my desk where I don't have room for another full-size monitor. I asked if I could review the product without joining the affiliate program, if I'd be able to give my full honest opinion, and if they would have to approve the video before I post it. I never heard back. After looking into the K3, I actually decided even before I ordered it that it probably wouldn't be the right product for my use case. But I was still intrigued, and I found it heavily discounted, so here we are. I bought this one myself, and I've put it through its paces, so let's get into it. The K3 is an interesting product that integrates a lot into one device. The K3 has a mechanical keyboard with RGB backlighting and hot swappable keys. It has a roughly 13-inch 1920 by 720 resolution touchscreen display. It has a 5 gigabit per second USB hub with 2 USB-A ports, SD and micro SD card readers, and an M.2 SATA SSD socket. And it has built-in speakers. The normal price for this on their website is supposedly $599. I have no idea if it has ever actually been sold for that price, or if they're one of those companies that just puts a ridiculously high price on products and then crosses it out to make it feel like you're getting a deal. Hopefully not, because that would technically qualify as false advertising. I got this one from Amazon with Kwumsy as the seller, and I got it for far less than even the discounted price on their own website. So who knows? Either way, the price obviously varies quite a bit. In terms of build quality, it's okay overall, but it has a bit of a hollow, cheap plastic feel in some places, and the display hinge doesn't inspire confidence. The hinge may be perfectly sturdy, but it gives a flimsy impression, and it seems like it could break if you aren't careful. It's fairly heavy at nearly 5 pounds. It does have an aluminum plate on the bottom, and the touchscreen is glass, but externally it's otherwise mostly plastic. The carbon fiber pattern even is just a texture molded into the plastic. It has little flip-out feet on the bottom so that you can adjust the angle, and they are metal and they feel sturdy enough, but they are very thin and they don't have any rubber or padding. I can't say for sure that they would damage a desk, but this thing is pretty heavy, so you might want to be careful depending on your desk. It does sit on rubber pads when the feet are not extended. The USB-C cable it comes with has a right angle plug on one end and a straight end on the other. The straight end is easier to use at the K3 because the connections are actually recessed in the back, and the right angle plug would block some ports either way it's faced. And with it being recessed, it's also difficult to pull straight out on the right angle plug, so it kind of feels hard on the port. The right angle end seems to make more sense on, for instance, a laptop. But the cord specifically says to connect the right angle end to the K3. I've never seen a directional USB-C cable, so maybe it's because it makes it easier to use the built-in cable clips on the back. I did have a bit of a tinfoil hat moment, wondering if maybe they had some kind of malware chip in one end of the cable, and they wanted to ensure that that end got plugged into your computer. Probably not, and they don't say why, there's just a sticker on the cord. At least the sticker is polite. I'm a bit of a rebel, so I plugged the straight end into the K3, and it worked fine. Both ways worked fine. I also tried other USB-C cables I have, and they worked too. So who knows, it might just be the cable clip thing. I did have an issue that occurred no matter what cable was used or in what orientation. My Framework laptop would not post with the K3 connected. When I try to turn the laptop on with the K3 connected, the power light comes on and nothing else happens. If I unplug the K3, my computer posts and begins booting immediately. As soon as the computer begins to boot, or at any time after that, I can plug the K3 in and then everything works fine. My laptop doesn't have this issue with any other device. I can have other docks connected and even portable monitors that are powered by the laptop, and it posts and boots fine. So it is a unique issue to the K3. On the other hand, I connected the K3 to an old ThinkPad, and it booted up fine with it connected. So you may or may not run into this quirk. On the K3, there is a single USB-C port for data and display. It uses DisplayPort Alt mode via USB-C for the display signal. Not all USB-C ports support DisplayPort Alt mode. Some do, some don't. The ones on my desktop PC do not. Technically, some laptop ports may not either, though I think most modern laptops will have at least one that does. Fortunately, the K3 does include a cable that breaks out the USB-C connection into separate HDMI and USB-A connections. Unfortunately, in that configuration, you only get USB 2 data speeds, not the 5 gigabit per second USB 3 speeds. And if the USB-A ports on your computer can't supply enough current, you may also have to use a separate power supply. So it is a more complicated and lower functionality setup versus just a single USB-C cable on a device that supports DisplayPort Alt mode over USB-C. So just be aware of that potential limitation on some computers, even if they have USB-C ports. For the original use case I had in mind as a keyboard with a compact second monitor for my desktop, the connectivity wasn't the main issue. It just takes up too much space on the desk. Even with the display tilted all the way up, it still sticks back just as far, taking up a lot of depth on the desk. And that's actually the main reason why it doesn't really work out for me personally. What about use as a portable mechanical keyboard and second display when traveling with a laptop? For me, it's basically a non-starter for that, just due to the sheer size and weight. As I said before, it weighs nearly 5 pounds, and it's sort of huge. With the display folded down, that's as small as it gets, and it dwarfs my Framework 13 laptop. The K3 is heavier, quite a bit larger, and roughly twice as thick. So bringing this along with me while traveling would be like carrying 2 additional larger laptops. That may not be a concern for you, but it's just something to be aware of if you're wanting this for travel. Just for comparison, along with my laptop, here is a 14-inch portable monitor, a wireless mechanical keyboard, a USB-C dock with memory card slots, and an M.2 SSD enclosure that is actually faster than the one built into the K3. And it's compatible with 4 more drives, but we'll get into that in a bit. Some will surely prefer to have all of those things combined into one, but just be aware it doesn't actually save space. All of this stuff, including my laptop, can fit into a smaller bag than the K3 can by itself. Another use case for the K3 could be as a dock that lives on your desk and offers a second display, a keyboard, and a USB hub when using a laptop at a desk. I think that is probably the best use case for the K3, though not a super convenient one for me personally since my laptop won't turn on with the K3 plugged in. But even with my laptop, once powered on, the K3 is completely plug and play with a single USB-C cable. The K3 also has a second USB-C port which can pass power delivery to the connected laptop, though it doesn't offer any kind of data connection. The K3 could also have a SATA M.2 drive in it for extra storage or a place to back things up when docked, and it has a couple USB-A ports on the back for a mouse or other peripherals. So that's what the K3 can do, but how good is it? I think the keyboard is the best part of the K3. It comes with pre-lubed Gateron yellow key switches. They are linear mechanical keys, and I think they feel nice. I know mechanical keyboard keys are a personal preference thing, but these feel smooth and they aren't too loud. They are also hot swappable, so you can even change them if you want. Part of what makes the typing feel solid and not too loud is probably the fact that not only is the keyboard plate mounted in silicone tabs all the way around, or at least I say mounted, but it's just kind of setting in them, but there is also a hard rubber pad under the keyboard plate, so it doesn't sound hollow or clunky as you type. The keyboard is really tall, so you'll probably want some kind of rest if you're going to be typing very long, so you don't have to crane your wrists or kind of hover them. The volume knob is a simple, fast way to change volume, and you can press it for play-pause. Weirdly, it's not good for fine volume control. It has distinct clicks, and each click adjusts the volume level about twice as much as a single press of a volume key on my laptop. The backlighting has a variety of modes, but they are south-facing LEDs, and the keycaps aren't designed for the lighting to shine through, so the lighting is purely aesthetic. It doesn't help you see the key labels in the dark, and having the bright RGB shining upward can even make it harder to see the labels. Still, the keyboard is the high point. The display is a bit disappointing. The color balance isn't perfect, but it's okay. It also has decent response times, viewing angles, and sharpness. It's pretty uniform as well, without obvious light bleed. However, I initially found myself shifting my head around trying to find the correct viewing angle. But the viewing angle wasn't the problem. It just has a washed out look. It stood out to me straight away. I went looking for picture settings, but other than brightness, which just adjusts brightness, the only other setting is color. It sounds promising, but it just has sRGB, warm, and cold options. That's it. And all the options do is slightly adjust the color temp. Some content doesn't look too bad, but sometimes the washed out and desaturated look becomes more obvious. When off, the screen is gray, not black. You can see the difference between the display and the bezel here. So this is the darkest and most black that the pixels can ever look. Combine that with low saturation and it just looks washed out. It's usable, and if you're just using it as a secondary display for a control panel or something, it's fine. But it does look noticeably worse next to any other display I have, including cheap generic displays. The $70 14-inch portable monitor I showed earlier looks way better. On the plus side, it does have a touchscreen, which works fine. The M.2 drive bay uses a B key socket. This means it will only work with SATA drives that have a slot for a B key, or SATA drives with dual slots for B and M key. If you have an NVMe M.2 SSD with an M key, it will not work. The vast majority of drives out there on the market these days are NVMe with M key connections. And even the few compatible SATA drives I could find were actually combo B and M key drives, which would have also worked in an M key socket. So it seems like a no-brainer to go with an M key socket, which would work with virtually any drive on the market. And it seems like an odd decision to go with a B key on a modern device. I didn't have a B key compatible drive, so I ordered one from Amazon to test in the K3. The order was screwed up and delayed, but this isn't an Amazon rant, so I'll let that go. The drive finally showed up and it didn't work. The drive itself seems to be defective. That or the K3 killed it. I tested the drive in another device after the K3 and it simply doesn't work. Sorry, I tried, but I don't feel like ordering another drive. A fast external SSD connected to one of the USB-A ports on the K3 provided read speeds of roughly 400 megabytes per second. I imagine a drive in the M.2 slot would be similar. Assuming you have or can get a B key M.2 drive, and assuming it works. I suppose it could be slower for some reason, but it couldn't be too much faster than that because the max connection speed of the K3 is 5 gigabits regardless. As for the speakers, if you have a setup without speakers for some reason and you just need something, they work. But they are pretty tinny and they aren't super loud. The Framework 13 isn't known for amazing speakers, but they are louder and have far more low end than the speakers in the K3. Even if you're hooking the K3 up to a phone, you're likely better off using your phone speakers. My phone speakers are far louder and have more bass than the K3. The memory card slots are UHC 1 and max out around 95 megabytes per second read speeds, in my testing. Like the rest of the connections, they are recessed way under the back, all but requiring you to lift the whole thing up to access them, and it's still not as easy as I'd like. It's not an especially convenient implementation. It's better than nothing, but if the memory card readers were something I was going to regularly use, I'd rather have a separate reader that was easier to access and possibly faster. So that's the Kwumsy K3. It's a decent mechanical keyboard with a mediocre touchscreen, tinny speakers, an M.2 slot that only works with B-key SATA drives, and a USB hub with 2 USB-A ports and memory card readers that are recessed under the back, all in a device that is larger than 2 of my laptops combined. It's still an interesting device that I imagine some folks will be happy with, especially if they experience fewer issues than I did. It's kind of neat in a quirky way, and I may still find a use for it. But I think it's only fair to be realistic about what you're getting. And it's not exactly cheap. With the large discounts I found, I'd say the price isn't too bad, but it's still not an especially great value. You could get the monitor, dock, keyboard, and M.2 SSD enclosure I showed earlier, all for quite a bit less money than even the heavily discounted price of the K3. To be fair, the K3's display is a touchscreen, and the other monitor I showed is not, but it is a larger display and it is a much nicer image. And there are touchscreen monitors out there that still wouldn't bring the cost of those items up to the level of the K3. And the $599 normal price on their website is completely ridiculous for what you're getting. Honestly, other than the keyboard, there is an air of done as cheaply as possible about the K3. And it's a shame because it is an interesting device. But the more I tried to do with it, the more quirks and limitations I ran into. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. And as always, thanks for watching. Take care.